everyone, today's mini lesson is going to be focusing on the structure of government. As I said in the last mini lesson, we're focusing right now on looking at governments in general, and then we'll start focusing on government specifically within the United States. This mini lesson, we're specifically going to focus on 3 different structures of government that apply to different government systems throughout the world. The learning target for this lesson states I can compare and contrast federal, confederal, and unitary systems of government. Within this mini lesson, we're going to define each of these and then look at a specific example of how they apply to a government system that either exists in the world today or has existed in history. The first form of government that we're going to focus on, or the structure of government, is a unitary government. In a unitary government, all power is concentrated in a central or national government, which is generally housed in the capital. That central government or that national government has the authority to make and enforce laws and collect the taxes. In effect, they have basically all of the power. There are different types of government that can be considered unitary governments. The United Kingdom is one of the most famous examples of a unitary government. In the United Kingdom, the national government determines the education system throughout all of the country, the healthcare system, and transportation. It is centered in London. However, the local governments in areas like Scotland, Wales, North Ireland have limited power. There are other examples of other forms of unitary governments that exist. These include Japan and France. In those governments, there is also a centralized version of power where they make the decisions for the country as a whole, and the local or state governments in individual parts of the country have very limited say. The next system of government we're going to focus on is a federal system of government. In a federal system of government, there is a division of power between the central and the regional governments. A lot of people, when they hear a federal government, they assume that the federal government has all of the power. However, in a federal system, you're really talking about a balance of power between states and the central government or the national government. Typically, within a federal system of government, the central government is responsible for national issues that would apply all parts of the country. This includes things like defense, talking about things like military and foreign policy, so building relationships with other countries. The regional governments or local governments typically depend on local issues. So, for example, they may help to run the education system or the transportation system. The United States is one of the most well-known examples of a federal government. Within the United States, it is the federal government's responsibility in Washington, D.C. to take care of things such as the national security and immigration policy. Individual states are responsible for education and transportation. These individual responsibilities are spelled out in the Constitution, which creates a division of power between the federal government and the state government, which was very important to the founding fathers when they created the Constitution. Finally, the Confederate system of government is when regional or state governments hold a majority of the power. In a lot of ways, in a Confederate system, it is an alliance of different states that make up a country instead of talking about a strong central country. In a Confederate system of government, the states have the sovereign power, which means that they have a majority of the power instead of the central government. Instead, the central government has very specific responsibilities, which are typically responsibilities that the state allows them to have and not necessarily something that they claim the power to do themselves. The European Union is kind of an unconventional example of a Confederate system of government because it's not talking about a country, but rather is talking about an international organization which houses a majority of the countries that are in Europe. Within the European Union, the individual countries control domestic policies, so the countries that make up the European Union run the day-to-day responsibilities. They create laws that are specific to that country that may or may not be the same as other countries within the Union. However, the European Union as an organization helps the countries to cooperate based on trade. So, for example, they have a common currency system as well as an environmental regulation, so dealing with things like climate change. So, other than those issues, for the most part, the European countries run independently. There have been other examples of Confederate governments throughout history. For example, the Confederate States of America existed in the United States during the Civil War when the Southern states separated from the rest of the Union. And then the Confederate States of the Rhine was in existence in Germany from 1806 to 1816 under Napoleon.